Hello and welcome to Making It Easy to Be Human podcast. I'm Dr. Manijeh Motaghy, founder of Perfectly Here and author of It's Not Easy to Be Human. I'm an organizational psychologist, UCLA mindful instructor, and the MLO methodology designer, which you will learn about MLO throughout these podcasts. In this podcast, we explore the systemic, environmental, and developmental challenges that shape our lives and the future of humanity. We share practical insights and tools to help make being human easier. I am joined by my co-hosts, Mary Aroyan, licensed psychotherapist, and Matthew Law, university lecturer, mindfulness practitioner and advocate, board member, and advisor. So today in this session, we are talking about the meta crisis of all these difficulties that we hear about in our world. And we've decided to begin from chapter 1 of the book, It's Not Easy to Be Human, called Suffering is Not an Option. And so just going back to the roots of where do all these problems begin? And today we have some kind of a meta crisis or wicked problems where solving one problem doesn't really alleviate everything else. Solving the social media problem, solving the AI problem, solving the disconnection problem, intimacy, reduction in intimacy problem. So many different issues are intertwined that make our lives much, much harder than before. And so we'd like to jump into this and get into chapter 1. Chapter 1 is really setting the stage for understanding why it's not easy to be human, or really driving the point that it's not easy to be human, and why it's not, and that everything we know, or how we behave or how we act, we learn them as we grow up. We are exposed to the environment, culture, norms, the society, our parents, and all of this, and then we grow up and we enact them. And so also to mention that yesterday was Mother's Day here in the US, and that's a very sensitive day for a lot of people, and including myself. I had a tough, tough day that it didn't seem tough to me, but I became triggered when with siblings and all that. I became triggered about something that had nothing to do with my being a parent or a child or anything. But then I realized afterwards that it had to do with me being a mother, having lost a child, and those emotions kicked in. So there's a lot of expectations that come with being a parent, obligations and disappointments and hopes and desires, and a lot of different things that we humans have them in our template, in our life template. So I'd like to just open the session with my colleagues and begin talking about these things and sort them out for our viewers and listeners. Matthew, you had some things you were sharing before this session about parenting and motherhood. You had a beautiful thing you talked about. Where did this come from, this Mother's Day?
Yeah, sure. Yes, sure. This is the time of year, May, end of spring, beginning of summer, where we really do see how the earth is celebrating life. It's a time where there are new lambs and new chickens, new animals, new growth on the trees. Everything is green. It's a wonderful time. It's a real time of birth and being born. And I think that's a good way for us also to celebrate Mother's Day too. Um, And we've had a lot of discussions about this celebration as well. And it ties back into the book in the beginning of the chapter one, where we just talk about how a lot of the way we are as humans is started in our childhood too. And in many cases, they come from a place of love and how we want to be as humans as well, and how our parents have the best wishes for us. The story around Mother's Day is that I was at a meta crisis event and we were talking as a group and celebrating the mothers in the room at the beginning of the day, and just talking about how in Europe, Mother's Day originally was not mothers apostrophe s, but mothers as a plural, because it started in Europe from a celebration or a ask by the mothers to come together as mothers, plural, to stop wars and to stop sending their sons to war, particularly World War One, and that there was a recognition that there needed to be better leadership, and that the mothers were the better leaders in this case to stop the wars and to stop sending people to their deaths. So that's where it started in Europe, and it's a really good place for us also to maybe start that discussion today as well.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Oh, wow. Mary, what do you think of this day, this Mother's Day?
I think, honestly, happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. It's, I think, the hardest job in the world, to basically take responsibility and mold, hopefully, decent human beings to, enter society. But Matthew, as I'm hearing you say that, I'm thinking, especially at that time, how women didn't have rights, didn't have a voice, didn't have any power really. For them to come together on that caliber, on that level, speaks so much about their courage, right? But also the suffering that came with that to basically allow them to take action in their own hands, right? So how much suffering were they experiencing? What were they going through to basically go out of the cultural norms and the acceptance at that time? I'm sure they got a lot of backlash too for being outspoken or doing whatever they did. But to go to that length or to take that risk, I think is speaking so much about a suffering, but also the human capacity of connection and love and just the well-being of one another. And I think that it touches on so much, and it's a beautiful thing. And I'm glad that we do recognize the origin of that and also the courage it took for those women. So yeah, it kind of ties back into suffering, but also change comes through suffering. And these women decided that they had to take control, regardless of what was expected or not expected of them.
Yeah, yeah. It all starts from the birth,
Mm,
before birth. Right. So I remember in chapter one, I talk about it too, that it dawned on, I, as a person, as a growing and developing person myself, and then having to raise my children and wanting to raise the best children ever, right? To be ethical and moral and intelligent and polite and well-mannered and successful. Oh my goodness, there's too much, but too much expectation. So, and looking around, always getting educated how to do this. Thankfully, one time, one of these conferences, this psychologist said, well, we weren't born with a manual, with a
mm.
template. There is no human template or manual. Oh my God, this light bulb came on to me that what? Yes, how come I never heard that before in my psychology courses, right? And and it just became a hope for me that we're not stuck, that if we we design our own template, our template of how to live life gets designed through ourselves and others, then it can be redesigned, then it can be modified, then it can actually change hopefully. And so it's not that easy. But that was my aha moment, which, led me to all this work and all this, the creation of that methodology after so many years, and really the hope that there is. And then recently, though, I've also come across some realization and some understanding that change or transformation or upgrading our human software or our way or template needs certain fundamental capabilities, and including desire as well. If there is no desire nor capability nor enough insight to see that such skills or qualities could be developed and better, that the person's suffering could reduce, their happiness could increase. Those are also the desire and capability are also necessary for that. But we don't know who has it, who doesn't have it, so we just continue uh, talking about it and working on it. And as much as the saying that in the Buddhist, the monks and teachers who talk about, they give a talk, they give a teaching, and then at the end they say, well, I offer this for your reflection, to take what works for you and is of use and leave the rest. So that's what I think we can all do for ourselves and others. What else were you guys thinking about chapter 1? Points that stood out to you?
I
I
think it
think it's about how the software starts and occurs for children growing up, and how that's encoded by the parenting and the different conditions. And I go back to like this time of year, spring, summer, new growth. We all know that a tree will somehow grow in between cracks in a wall. We know also that in California, for example, lots of sunshine and water, you'll have lots of sugar in your fruits and grapes and everything else. But in a cooler climate, it's a different type of fruit and a different type of sweetness as well. And I think that analogy is very also true for children. You can see how people that are expected the best, they want the best for their children, can sometimes create different personalities that may find it difficult to not get what they always want later on in life. Or they may be extremely resilient and tough, but very closed to intimacy and connection. So I think that that's a lot of what chapter one's talking about as well. How the software develops, and sometimes the software develops from conditions, but also from conditions where people had the place of love. And I'll end with one really good example for my own children. I mean, we all thought 15, 10, 5 years ago, giving a toddler an iPad was the best form of a babysitter.
Mhm.
Let them watch the latest Disney movie. But we also know those decisions have come at a cost as well, about how people are developing their own personalities. And we need to think about what our actions for our children when it comes to how we're raising them, or maybe even how we're helping them to be quiet when they're young, can have big impacts later on in life.
What do you think of this? Oh my God, like giving children, girls, especially 9-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, the idea that they need to take care of their skin tightness so that they could build a regimen and prevent aging or whatever. get ahead of it. At that age, 9, 10 years old, 11 years old, is that what they're supposed to be worrying about? Is that what they're supposed to be? Is it necessary? Is it, Mary, what are your thoughts about such things?
Oh no. Yeah, as soon as you're saying that, I'm thinking to myself, yes, the prevalence of body dysmorphia, eating disorders, everything is just on the rise so much because we place so much importance on the appearance of something or the status of something, right? And we've defined all of these things in certain ways where it gives you, according to societal beliefs, right? Or things that have been passed down, that certain things create more success or certain things are seen as more successful or have more status, right? And for a lot of these cultures, status is something that's really, really pushed through, right? And it's not for the right reasons. It's if you look a certain way, you'll do better, or you'll be more accepted, you'll be more liked, you'll have more followers. And then why do we believe like aging is such a bad thing, right? How many people can actually say they have the ability and the blessing of aging, right? There's so many young people that go, but like again, back to this going back to chapter one, is these secure attachments versus these insecure attachments, right? I mean, and I'm not saying these parents do the best they can. And if you look back over generations, they've gotten better, right? But the emotional connection, the support, the psychological aspects, right, that go with raising these kids to be better individuals or to be more confident for the right reasons and have more peaceful, happier lives, right? It's not that these parents are deliberately trying to maybe create insecure attachments, but they don't know any different either, right? So these things do get passed on. And since we're on Mother's Day, like we were talking about mothers in the past, like I'm Armenian, so coming from a culture where back in the day, there was a lot of women who would lose their babies very early on, right? Maybe several months old, maybe miscarried, but a lot of it was after birth. And I know, like personally, my grandmothers on either side have lost 4 children each. And my maternal grandmother lost twins. Her first set of kids was twins at 8 months old. And what we were discussing is how these women were never given the ability, right? Or the importance to the understanding of this importance of grieving, or that this is to lose 8-month-old twins as your first children, and then like you're expected to kind of bounce back and go through life and just go through the motions and have more children and suck it up. This is life. You got to go through it. These things are passed down to us too, right? This belief system or this way of suffering or the generational traumas. And so it all comes together because they try to do the best they can, but they're also transferring a lot of these um misconceptions, these wrong beliefs, right? These wrong narratives. I'm not saying wrong in a sense where it's judging them, but we see that they create a lot of problems and a lot of anguish for people because first of all, they could be outdated. They're also rooted in the wrong belief system or the wrong reasons, right? And it just creates that suffering more and more. And we might not even be aware that that's something that was in our childhood rooted that is now continuously building, or we're seeing the ripple effect of all of that.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. I'd like to say something here about the loss of children. Um, because of the practices that I have, when I lost my child and went through tsunamis and hurricanes, you've heard me say, of waves of grief that would be like a tsunami, be like a hurricane that you cannot prevent or watch out for yourself or duck or go under. You're destroyed every time and then you bounce back. But what I was privileged, I think, to know, to understand was that these waves or these experiences are not just psychological. They are neurological. They're biological. They're existential. You know, they're like every cell in the body has lost something. Eyelashes have lost eyelashes, you know, it literally, not metaphorically. Literally, this loss is so unavoidable and involuntary that the body reacts, the psychology reacts, you know, your spirit reacts, your soul and then if you were born in a culture like mine that said, oh, the more love you have for your child, the more you suffer for. You know, the more continually you suffer for them, it means you love them more. You know, and there is no room for a mother to breathe, to have some sense of self. For myself, what about myself to be happy and to be live with ease, you know? And ideas, poets and philosophers would talk about everywhere that a mother walks, that place, that ground is heaven. So it's like you have to live up to these expectations and these kinds of ideals, such high ideals, and they become a part of your, template. There's no, you can't help it. I mean, chapter 2, we talk about autopilot. You can't help it. This is now part of your coding and your paradigm of life, and you have this role. You're the mother. You were privileged. You became the luckiest person to have the joy, but it's all 95% suffering, 5% joy. I think, you know, and that joy is so intense. I don't know, in nature does it probably. That joy, that happiness is so intense that you endure all of these other things. So yeah, yeah, my God. So losing two twins doesn't matter how old they are. They're from your biology. They're
Mhm.
pieces of your blood and bone and skin and tongue and eyes and you know, it's not easy. So not easy. Wow.
Just to clarify, it was a lot of milk poisoning and stuff that would happen back then, I guess. You know, it
Yeah.
was common. And I think that was the other problem too, that I think people were thinking they had to be a little desensitized to it, right? Because it was so prevalent, like most people experienced it, right? Like they didn't have the medical know-how or you know, it's like all these there's superstition involved in this stuff too, but like they didn't know everything we know now, but and the fact that it was so normalized, you know, it doesn't take away the pain, but maybe, you know, you feel like, oh, I just have to adapt to it, right? It's just and that gets passed down to and you wonder, and that's what I was saying. That's it's like you wonder how they've become the way they've become, or sometimes as bitter as they are or resentful. It's because of going through these courses of things and not being able to have the acknowledgement and understanding of what you're experiencing. And just even the fact alone for some people, knowing that what they're experiencing is something that other people are have felt as well, they already feel like this immense load is lifted because they're not alone in this, right? You think like, oh, am I the only one going through this? Is something wrong with me? Or why do I feel like this is always a struggle? Why do I always get stuck here? And I think by bringing that vulnerability back into it, that acknowledgement, that it can create so much more awareness and that hope for change. But
Mm.
we all just become kind of more centered in the normalcy of it, right? Just think of anything that's happening. Gas prices nowadays. If we told you 10 years ago, I mean 10 years ago, if I told you gas prices are going to be where they are now, right? You would have laughed or you'd be like, how are we going to do it? Now you're excited if you got find gas for 5.50 a gallon, right? And not $6. And we're slowly getting desensitized and more acclimated to whatever the new norm is that's being pushed to us, right? And even with these kids, the appearance, right? It's no secret that social media tries to promote an hourglass kind of figure algorithm or that message. So, what are these kids at 9 years old going to see and feel about themselves if this is what's being promoted, or this is like to be beautiful means this, you have to have these characteristics? They're so young. They're so susceptible to, they don't know, they haven't even formed their identities yet. And here we are forcing this down their throat that you have to do this to be good enough for this. Or, and now imagine if the parent already struggles with that same kind of body dysmorphia or the self-esteem, right? The confidence level that may be lacking. What's being passed down? What's being reinforced? And going back to that secure, insecure attachment, maybe you might want to kind of touch on that so people understand what it is that involves or what that does to someone down the line.
Yeah, let's see what Matthew. I don't know, either one of you talked about the rate of happiness for children. I think Matthew was you. Rate of happiness for children has gone down. Studies show. Does that, um,
That was Matthew.
yeah, do you want to talk about that, or something else that's showing up for you right now?
Um, what what's coming up a lot, and I can tie it into this happiness of children's statistics, is that tying it back to the whole software MLO, it does, on the one hand, it does appear that there's a lot of new and modern hacks into our human software that's making us more wanting to be superficial, fillers, Botox, Instagram worthy, everything's great. I mean, that's a interruption into some of our generational software, and we need to think about that. I know in for another example in Europe is that a lot of the Pilates and yoga studios are being replaced by cosmetic surgery studios now. So people know that they can take a GLP-1 Ozempic and skip going to the gym and spend that money that they were going to spend on a gym membership on Botox and fillers. This is a new version of software that's coming into their identity and how they want to show up in society. But I also wanted to say that, tying back to what you had both said, that a lot of our software is generational. Best example I have in Europe is that I'll often see some young students in their late teens, 20s, who will have a meal and they'll eat everything on the plate. And you'll ask them, who taught you that? Like, where did you learn this from? And they'll always say it wasn't from their parents. It was from their parents' parents or their parents' parents' parents. And that is software that was installed many generations ago in times of hardship, famine, war, exactly what we were talking about when Mother's Day started. And so we need to have this discernment, I think, around what software are we going to keep from the past or reinstall from the past versus what software are we going to resist today. And one of the big reasons for us to start having those discussions is because we do see in the statistics that children in 2026 are as unhappy as they've ever been since the Great Wars. And that's a problem. That's a big problem. They're unhappy because of they don't feel connected, they're lacking friends, they don't have good nutrition, they have their own health issues, and that's all contributing to the statistics that say children are unhappy compared to previous generations, even going back 100 years.
And this is when we have advancement more than ever in the history of humanity in all kinds of, through innovations and digitalizations and I mean, everything has been improved. Medical, health, provided, people live longer. People live longer. People, I don't know now what the statistics are currently, but comparatively, right? There's so much more resources, at least in these countries, the Western countries, to live longer, but and then people want to live longer. Why do we want to live longer than 90? Why? And just be incapable of doing much in life, but still we want to live longer than. So yeah, and then
Well, if you look 20, but you're actually 90, it helps.
I guess so. But I think also this understanding of what is re happiness really. Is it how does one measure oneself's happiness, Is it by the experience of it? Is it by the duration of it? Is it by the, context of it? How does one, that's something that I think is useful because people who do this, they want to look younger and they think that's the cause of happiness. Do they really feel happy, or do they know there is anxiety below it that they're constantly about to lose, and then they have to go and regain, and then they're gonna lose it, and then they have to, you cannot make anything permanent. So do they know this is there is a problem with this kind of happiness? How do we
Yeah.
understand or experience the kind of happiness that is fulfilling and that we can actually have at any moment, any time, and with anybody under any circumstance? These are not embedded in our learning process.
But it's taught in a certain way, no? Like in certain cultures, I mean, in our cultures now in America, right? We're driven by success, right? And what defines success? The amount of money you make, right? The type of car you may drive, the what you're wearing, how you look, all of these things, where you live, right? The things you're able to do, some of your hobbies even are might be driven by this level of status, right? Or having this level of status. How many more people are golfing nowadays? Let's be serious, because it offers a type of status, or it brings some people together. But happiness has been forged, I think, by different people, and to encompass this, maybe this temporary satisfaction, right? This the new toy. Oh, now I did that, right? The Botox, and now I feel good, but then that's going to wear off, and then you're going to have to do it again, right? And are you aware that you're doing this for whatever reason? Maybe some people, maybe,
So
but some
Mary,
people
can you
distract.
can you tie this to the secure attachment and
In the sense of, yeah, well, secure attachment, if we're taught, and again, this is no criticism on most parents, because they often don't even know what they're doing, or they're trying to do the best they can given where they came from. But to give the right level of nurturance, the attention, the love, uh, it helps biologically, neurologically, emotionally, psychologically, to feel you are seen, you're valued, you matter, right? And building the right level of confidence, building a right the an understanding of the necessary components of what maybe real happiness is versus the subjective reality that we are given, right? Especially for a child who's seeing at 9 years old that this is the way you're supposed to look, right? Then that doesn't show me secure attachment, because this child wouldn't be doubting or needing to conform so easily if they felt that they were good enough as they were, or and to build on that. And also, I think a lot of parents nowadays do to add a different false sense of confidence sometimes, where it creates like this entitlement or this false belief that they are superior in a sense too. So there's different um paths that goes off of, right, where it's like too much coddling, right, too much of creating this belief that like you are great the way you are too. We all have room for improvement, we're all going to fail, we're all going to have successful moments, and teaching them how to balance that, right, or not to internalize that responsibility, like you're a horrible person because you couldn't perform this task, or because you didn't win at the sport you were playing, whatever it is, right, is creating this understanding, this healthy approach of a balance of all of it. I think, and when we don't have that, it shows up in everything else we're trying to seek to make up for that or to compensate for that.
And I'm wondering though, um how guaranteed is it that a child being born is going to get that? Do you have any kind of statistics that show there are actually people who are growing up with secure attachment models? Um, and who are they? Maybe that's another thing for another podcast.
I don't know the statistics right off the top of my head
Who
right
are
now,
they?
and yeah, but I'm hoping more and more, just because we're evolving, because our understanding is growing. We understand the importance of the psychological, emotional, physical, that it's all connected. And if one is off, then it's going to have a ripple effect on everything else in your life.
Right, right, right. Yeah.
Most of us, I don't think, have had secure attachments. Let's be serious, especially maybe the newer generations may have more and more of that just because parents know more. But how many of us can say they did the best they could? Yes, can we blame our parents for a lot of things and even have resentment? Absolutely. But if you're at a point where you can point that out, then I think you should start taking account and try to change it yourself, because sometimes your parents not even here anymore, and are you gonna keep blaming? They did it's going back to um, that self-awareness, that willingness to take accountability with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And Matthew, you had talked also about global intimacy disorders in relation to that unhappiness rising.
Okay, well, so to tie that back into, I think secure attachment is the ability to be intimate.
Mm.
And I don't think intimacy is something about being sexual. It's about sharing how you feel and your different emotions. And being secure is really a secure attachment is about, this doesn't feel right. I don't feel good. I need to set a boundary and not be part of this now. And then having from that unconditional love from the other side. Okay, I did my best in my exam and I failed. Okay, you're still part of the family. So, and I think also uh, when you see things that aren't secure attachment, you have both extremes. On the one extreme, it's like you're always not good enough. You always have to prove your worth to be loved. That's not secure. But then also, equally as bad is saying, don't worry, pick yourself up, you'll be fine. You're you're a big boy, a big girl, get going. It's not really that bad. It's just a flesh wound. That it can equally be as damaging. So we need to, when we talk about the intimacy disorder, people are running away from showing their true emotions. You ask people, let's go down to have a meal together and talk about some of our problems. They're going to default to, no, we need to figure out our tax return, or have you got the latest encryption software on your phone? They're dodging real conversations.
Mm.
And that's the intimacy disorder. And I really think that we need to bring this back. And another concept we've been talking about a bit, and I think is really important for MLO, people talk a lot about having, like, screw you money. But why aren't people talking about having screw you family? Or I have screw you free time.
Hmm.
I have screw you the ability to go and spend time in nature and have great friends and talk to my friends. And when you really think about it, there you should be aiming for that. You should be aiming to have very strong friendships where you can have intimacy and share each other's thoughts and feelings and what we're worried about and support each other through suffering, which we talk about in chapter 1. or how we can go and respect the fact that we need good night's sleep, we prioritize our health, do exercise, spend time in nature. These are some of the things that we need to bring back into our human software as well.
Yes, yes, yes. So I just really thought that we stop and tell our viewers and listeners that we are three board members of this nonprofit called Perfectly Here, and we put some effort into in preparing these sessions, and we don't really have any budget right now to do editing or post-production, sort of work on these videos. So we hope you understand, and also that as you listen, as you watch, if these topics are valuable to you, to your reflection, evoking some thoughts into your life and how you can improve some things around it for yourself, we love it that if you subscribe to our podcast and help grow these, send them to other people, let them think about their lives and how they can go about it. And we grow together. And if there are any topics that anyone is interested about, please bring it to us. So I wanted, Matthew, you said something, it's equally damaging to sort of falsely encourage somebody, get up and continue, and you got what you need, and it's not that bad. And what do you think, instead of that, what would be useful for the person to have instead of just be resilient in a way, in this way, be resilient? Like, for example, if a person could develop this self-regulation, sort of, okay, let me be with this pain, let me be with this difficulty, let me see where did it go wrong so I can learn from it, kind of like an accountability model. Accepting what's wrong and what's the issue and the problem, forgiving oneself for messing up, and then examining where else do I do this, or how else do I experience such difficulties? Is there anything to learn here? Is there anything I can, you know? What are your thoughts about that?
So my thoughts are it's around safety. So if you have somebody that grew up whenever they were actually hurt, and let's not, like, maybe they did fracture a bone, but they were told you are strong enough and live through that, which was the wrong thing to do, and they were actually very scared, and they learned that love and affection would only come if they went through that. Then they go out into the world and they meet people who would never do that to them. That if a person that knew that they actually were actually in pain or injured, they would take them to a hospital. But these people have been conditioned in the opposite way. So we need to teach them that actually what happened to you perhaps came from a place of developing resilience, but in fact, you're in an environment where we do look after you. And if you do feel pain, we are here for you, and please tell us about it, and we'll move through this together in a much better and more secure way. And I think that's the big change that was to happen, because often these people in those situations that grew up like that, whenever they suddenly see people that want to really help them, they don't trust them. Because in fact, their nervous system is conditioned to always be in this default mode of choosing resilience and hiding or the suffering itself. And that's the work that needs to be done in those cases.
Yeah. So that brings us to the last kind of part of the chapter one, about choices, making our choices ours, meaning that all these conditions and all these different aspects of life, they influence us in a way that a lot of times we're not even aware of it. We make choices that are not, if we were aware, if we knew better, if we had other options, if we could actually implement making another choice, that we would make other choices. But because a lot of people say to some others, oh, you made the choice to be unhappy. That's your choice, which is not really, not kind, and it's not objective, and it is not reasonable to do so. So maybe about time to close our segment. Maybe we can give some couple of things that people can go do, might either reflect on or work on or be aware of. First of all, do buy the book. It's Not Easy to Be Human. It's on Amazon. Where's my, yes. Well, it's behind me. And send us, your questions. Do register for this community club of reading and answering and meeting the author. And I'll turn it to you two. Mary, you want to give anything before we leave?
Sure. To piggyback off of what Matthew said about the children being unhappy too, is I was watching a different podcast, and they were talking about how adult relationships, adult friendships are getting more and more difficult because people compared to 20 years ago are spending about 1,000 hours less a year socializing, connecting. And it's I don't think it's a coincidence that the lack of connection and community is by the lack of it is also making people unhappy, because we're not built to be alone, or to, I mean, being alone is there's a capacity to that. I'm not talking about loneliness or being alone, but we are built to be in communities, to thrive with one another, and to need that. And I think it's very, very important that we bring it back into that community, into more connection. And we're more alike than we want to admit, and we struggle with a lot of similar things, but it's just a matter of being open and vulnerable, and that safety coming in. And I hope that people can really focus on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Matthew, go ahead.
I think just to answer your question, I think I want to talk a little bit about hypervigilance.
Mm.
And it's important for us to understand and recognize how our nervous systems are, and many of the things we talk about in It's Not Easy to Be Human, the MLOs, is about how we can recognize that. So if you are somebody and in many cases, hypervigilance can be a superpower. I know many people that can recognize someone walking in the room if they're upset or not, but much, much faster than other people. But that, in many cases, that came from a childhood where they had to know if someone was upset or not very fast. They had to decide if they were going to stay in a room or go and hide. And that continues into adulthood. I know other friends, people that I've met, who can tell when the air conditioning changes by 1 degree. They have this sense, their nervous system is set to this hypervigilance of understanding how temperatures are in the house, and it's a safety factor. So I think what I want to just explore as well is that people need to sit with themselves and work with their family and friends and their teachers about how are their nervous systems, what are these superpowers, maybe hypervigilance, that they've also developed in their childhood that has continued in their adulthood, and where do they want to go with that? Because it can be very difficult to also reverse or change that. Do you want to? And how can that help you to be more secure with those around you as well?
Right, right, right. Well, thank you. Thank you both. This is all the time we professionals have for this session. And so in the book, It's Not Easy to Be Human, there are 60 fundamental lessons, life lessons and life intelligence lessons that you can explore. And we will talk about more of them at next sessions. And don't forget to subscribe and pass on and support this for yourself. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Bye-bye. Thank you.